what is unique about his learning? And I would say it's the following. Because Rabbi Steinsaltz didn't come with any baggage, if that's the way to put it, he's totally self-taught. Obviously, he's got great respect for halakha, he's got great respect for the chachamim, and he actually has a gift from Hashem. It's a special kind of genius, and I liken it to a computer database. He's got this unbelievable ability of absorbing information. He only absorbs what's relevant. It's all there, it's all cross-reference, and it just connects. So you can be talking about any subject, every subject you want. He's very modest, he'll never show off, he's very sweet, and he loves schmoozing. So when you schmooze with him, you can just go from one subject to the other, and it all connects together. It's just unbelievable what he does. So I would say what's unique about his teaching, it's his human way of doing things, his personal involvement with things. He's very relevant in terms of how he delivers a message, and he makes learning accessible, which has been his life's mission. This global day I'll come to is his life's mission is to make Yiddishkeit accessible to all Jews and also to non-Jews, to the whole world, and to make it easy, palatable, easy to get to, easy to understand. Most of us would never have the ability, even with time, to read through the entire Talmud in our lifetimes, let alone with everything else that he does. He's not just read through it, absorbed it, he's got it all up here, and he's been able to publish, as we said, 45 volumes. This was the year that all finished, on top of everything else that he does. So I would say, in what one hears from him, reads from him, it's his worldliness, his appreciation of all of Hashem's creations, everything, his unshackled thinking, and his contemporary approach to learning, where obviously he fits in with halakha. Pesach time in the Haggadah, we say Bechol Dor V'Dor, and it's normally in a negative context. It's Omdim Aleinu L'Chalotenu. We hear about every generation, the persecutions, etc. In my book with Rabbi Steinsaltz, I know about the book Mystery of You, and in one of the chapters we write about Bechol Dor V'Dor, Lechol Dor V'Dor. I think if there's one thing point I'd like to make tonight in what I'm sharing is that Yiddishkeit exists in every generation, it's relevant for every generation, and it continues. And the message which has to go to each generation has got to be something which they communicate with. We've got to be able to effectively communicate in a way, particularly with our young people, particularly with people who have not yet been connected, Jewish people who are very far away, and also, of course, non-Jewish people who wonder who we are and what we do. We've got to be able to resonate in their ears in a way that they're tuned in and they hear what our messages are. So Jewish learning and Jewish living must be relevant to all Jews in all places at all times. The Jewish people, we're a people who are living in the present. We're based on very strong foundations of a past, and we have a tremendous future. One of the things I'd mentioned from the Talmud and from Steinsaltz's Talmud, and it's no disrespect in any way to the Talmud as we know it, is as the Talmud developed, so the halakha of course continues, and it does continue and it builds, but in every generation the Chachamim have ways of explaining contemporary issues to their constituents, and they'll give examples, dugmat, in terms of current issues, is somehow it got stuck in the 18th and 19th centuries, very much because of the history of the Jewish people. I think the big thing that Rav Steinsaltz has done is we have all of that, but what he's added to it is a message from the 20th century and the 21st century, and then hopefully beyond. The Global Day of Learning. The Global Day of Learning is a very American thing, and when I've talked to Rabbi Steinsaltz about it, he sort of smiles, because he never says any disrespect, but he doesn't believe in global days, and he doesn't believe in learning in one day, he believes in learning. So last year when this came up, and I'll just digress for a sec, I'm going to leave this here, and with your permission, if it's okay, I'll ask my PA, this is from the Americans, who did a beautiful learning booklet about the Global Day of Learning. I'll ask my PA, she'll link you on the internet to it, so if it's okay, if anybody wants it, they can just get it from you, and they're free to print it or read it. So when we talked about this, and last year and then earlier this year, I suggested to the rabbi and to those organising it, that there's really two ways of looking at it. One way is for those people who have not had the opportunity to learn at all, and there are many Jewish people who have not had the opportunity to learn, that maybe this is some kind of a catalyst, some kind of a start, so that people become connected to something and then they can continue with their learning. And for those people, which most of the people here who are used to learning, maybe in many ways it's a kind of refreshment, a fresh start to think about the learning, to think about what is learning. Why? Why do we learn? What are we learning for? Who are we learning for? And how are we learning? And then we've got the learning, what about it? What are we doing with the learning? Are we learning for the sake of learning? Or are we learning at the expense of others? What are we doing with the learning? Rav Steinsaltz would say that the point about learning is to become a better human being, and we would call it being a mensch. That's what it's about. And what does it mean to be a mensch? How do we do this? In our approach to the others around us, in our approach to life and how we live our lives, in our approach to Yiddishkeit, in our approach to davening. And you see many people in davening, particularly people who don't speak Hebrew, who read the words. I'm not making a criticism, I have no idea what they're saying there. And I'm not such an expert, but when I learned, and I'm self-taught, I came from a non-religious family too, I wanted to understand what I was reading, so I spent a lot of time between English and backwards and forwards to try and get a feeling. So for me, when I daven, I'm not such a terrific daven, but when I daven, I have a very, very special connection, and that's why very often I prefer to daven on my own and not to be distracted so much. But I think it's very important in terms of who we are and where we're going with it. Another thing which we talked about, and which was late last year or this year, was that in the Jewish world, traditionally, it was Vishinantam Levanecha, that the parents had the learning and they passed it on to their children. And the children traditionally, especially in the yeshivot and the shtival, sat with the fathers and the grandparents and they learnt. In our generation, unfortunately, fortunately, there's some parents who can do it and some grandparents, but the majority don't. So we suggested we might do a program upside down, hafuk, where the children bring the parents and the children learn together with the parents. And in fact, that was going to be the program for this year, and unfortunately Rav Steinsaltz, his health is not so good, and we all wish him a refuah shalema. They should be okay, and as soon as he's okay, he said he's going to come here, and then maybe we can redo this. We had very exciting programs in a number of schools. And in terms of learning, the minutiae and the details, of course, are very important, but one needs a framework, a global picture, an overview, a perspective, to fit the details in. What's the purpose of learning, I said before. And most importantly, what kind of a human being am I, and what kind of a human being do I wish to be? So now with your permission, I want to share a few thoughts. And I've noticed there's a cycle of events, there's a sequence of events which continues, and it goes something like this. Obviously Hashem is the beginning, He's the epicenter. And Hashem is the one who creates, and He creates nature and life, and that's the physical world in which we live. And this creation takes place, and straight after creation, and part of creation, is a separation, a differentiation. I'm going to go into this a little bit more. And then there's blessing, and that's very important. And from the blessing we come to the Shabbat, which we know is the focal point of our whole week and most of our lives. From a human perspective, we have the midot, those personality and character traits, the kind of person we are and the kind of person we project to be. And even within the midot, as we grow and as we learn, and as part of learning, there's again a separation and differentiation.